I've played a lot of Super Mario Maker 2. It is definitely one of my favorite games of all time. The beauty of it is that it's a never-ending game with potential for an unlimited amount of levels, since the levels are made by the players themselves. Unfortunately, ever since the release of Super Mario Maker 1 on the Wii U, we've been bombarded with a tremendous amount of objectively bad levels, which the community has labeled as hot garbage. There's no real way to do this math, and I'm no MatPat from game theory, but I'm very confident on saying that over 90% of the levels in this game can be defined as hot garbo. That is why I decided to make a series on how to design good levels for Mario Maker 2. Now, I'm not pretending to be a pro level designer. I have some levels that I thought were good and realized months or years later that they were actually really weren't that good at all. However, I have sunk a decent amount of hours into both the first Mario Maker and the sequel, so I can at least say that I know what I'm talking about. Also, what makes a good level good is of course very subjective to every player, so take some and leave some from this video as you please. Now to get started, this video will focus only on platforming levels. You may be wondering, but Skate, Mario is a platforming game, isn't every level a platforming level? That is true. However, the Mario Maker community has generally agreed on what defines different types of levels. Levels that look and feel like a Mario level from a previous Mario Bros game designed by Nintendo is called a traditional level. Platforming levels are fairly more challenging and require a lot more jumping and bouncing. Normally they don't require too many complicated tricks like shell jumps and stuff, or that becomes more of a shell level. There's a very fine line that separates the different categories of levels, but again, these categories don't really exist, they're just decided by the community. So let's get started. Platforming levels are my personal favorite category of levels. To me, they are just a perfect amount of fun and challenge that makes any platforming game so good. They aren't an easy walk in the park like traditional levels, nor are they a 1 to 3 hour grind of difficult shell tricks. Just fun jumping and bouncing that take on average between 5 and 20 minutes to beat. The sweet spot. So, what does it take to make a good platforming level? First of all, make sure it's fun to play. If it's fun to you, the creator, to play even after spending so much time designing and playtesting it, then chances are it will be fun for other players as well. I was watching Grand Pooh Bear stream some time ago, and he said that creators should stop focusing on making their levels hard and start focusing on making them fun instead. I think that was the perfect way to describe it. Not to say that hard levels can't be fun, because of course they can, but fun should be the first criteria of any level making. Next, it's a good idea to choose a theme or gimmick and stick to it throughout the level. There are lots of videos on YouTube that explain how to make a good Mario Maker level by analyzing Nintendo's level design mentality. First, they introduce you to the theme of the level, with a certain item, platform, or enemy. This is for the player to familiarize himself with what is to come, by presenting the theme of the level with little to no chance of dying. Then, they expand on that theme by bringing the difficulty level up throughout the level, following the theme that was presented in the beginning. Then, at the end, right before Mario's classic pole dance of victory, they often like to help you reach the top of the flagpole by making it accessible thanks to whatever the level was themed around. One of my favorite level creators ever since Mario Maker 1 is Bufflin. This guy makes some of the best platforming levels out there. They are fun and challenging but not too hard, and can often be beaten within 5 to 10 minutes. I even have a challenge I like to do on this channel where I try to beat as many of his levels in 20 minutes. My record is 5 levels. Also, Bufflin often follows Nintendo's ways. He themes the entire level around the theme and sticks to it. Building your level around a theme isn't at all mandatory to making a good level, but it does add a certain feel to it, which is always a good idea. Next, if you're making a platforming level, you'll want to keep forcing the player into situations where they have to react quickly. If there is too much downtime or safe spots, the player will probably start losing the sense of fun and urgency, because the need to keep moving and jumping that are at the core of platforming will be gone. You want to make the player earn the safe spots after a series of jumps, to make them rewarding to the player. Next, think of cool setups. While blue platforms are super fun to use in platforming levels, they are becoming slightly overused. My point is, don't rely solely on this item. Try to combine them with other items to make cool setups. Personally, I'm a huge fan of setups that reuse items. For example, big Goombas that split into 2 smaller ones, Koopa Squirts, and shell recycles. These setups are great because they force the player to react quickly, predict where the next jump is going to be, and they just look super cool. And now, indicators. Indicators are becoming sort of a controversial subject because popular streamers are starting to say that they want less indicators because they're being overused, which is true. I'm not sure when indicators started being used, but it came to a point where level was almost considered bad if it didn't have any indicators. People were getting frustrated when they were dying over and over again just because they didn't understand the setup, or if they were doing the right thing but just didn't know where to line up their next jump. So indicators became a standard in good level design. Now, however, as mentioned earlier, they are getting overused. For example, almost every single spin jump is being indicated by a Z made with tracks, even when it is very obvious to the player that not spin jumping will result in a very painful death. At least, that's my understanding of why more and more people are encouraging creators to use less indicators. so I thought I would share my personal opinion on good indicators and where to use them. Let's start with the famous Z indicators. If the next jump is onto a thwomp or a spiny or anything that requires a spin jump, but said item is visible to the player, there is no need for a Z indicator. The player will know to spin jump. However, if the player is jumping to something that is currently off screen that does require a spin jump, then you definitely want to put an indicator, or the death will be your fault and not the player's fault. For jump indicators, this depends. There is no need to add an indicator on an enemy. The player will know to jump on said enemy. However, if there's a setup that requires the player to jump on something that is not already in the area that they're supposed to jump from, then you want an indicator. For example, with bullet bills or airborne shells. Coin trails. If the jump isn't blind, don't put coins. That coin sound can get super annoying. If the jump is blind, then add a coin trail to indicate where to land safely. Simple as that. Coins can also be used to show how many times to jump on said enemy. For example, in this setup, the player will grab the shell just by bouncing on the mole, as long as they are holding Y. However, in this setup, the player will need to jump twice in order to grab the shell. This can be hard to read in the heat of the action, so adding 2 coins is a good way to make it clear to the player that they need to bounce there twice. Throw indicators, in my opinion, are always good. It isn't always clear to the player when to throw shells and such, let alone where to throw it. The bracket indicator is super useful because it shows the player when to throw the item and even in which direction. Long story short, indicators are very useful, but try to use them only where they help the player know where to jump or what to do, but don't make them feel stupid by adding a Z indicator in front of a thwomp. Checkpoints. Checkpoints, checkpoints, checkpoints. Remember how for like the first 6 months of Mario Maker 1, checkpoints didn't even exist in the game? That was horrible. We're better than that now. Checkpoints exist, use them. Now, where to use them is the question. Generally, a good place for a checkpoint is about halfway through the 10 sections of a level, which normally is somewhere close to 30 seconds into a level. This of course is a very rough approximate, but you get the idea. Unfortunately, if you are making a level with a clear condition, you can't use any checkpoints, so it is a good idea to keep a level with a clear condition fairly short. It's hard to explain, but there comes a point in every level where it just feels like a good spot for a checkpoint. When a player feels like it's time for a checkpoint and then realizes that there actually is one right where it felt right, it's always a good feeling. Try picturing yourself in the place of someone playing a level for the first time. Where would you want there to be a checkpoint? It's very important to place yourself in the player's shoes because you have the advantage of having played every section several times while creating them, which the player hasn't. Also, if the checkpoint leads to a subworld, put the checkpoint in the subworld and not before the pipe in the overworld, otherwise the player will have to go in the entry pipe and out the exit pipe every time they respawn, which is a very annoying and easily avoidable waste of time. At the end of your level, if you're feeling generous, add coins and 1-ups to reward the player. This will especially be helpful if they're playing it during an endless challenge. I'm ashamed to admit that I almost always forget to do this in my levels, but it is always appreciated by the players. Finally, I'm a big fan of optional challenges and true endings. A lot of players are. It's very rewarding to complete a level and to complete an extra challenge on top of it. A good way to do this is to add optional red coins throughout the level that lead to a secret bonus room, or to add a key at the beginning of the level, forcing the player to clear the entire level without dying at all, to only name a few. In this case, just make sure to mention it in the description that the coins or keys are optional, or the player will have no way of knowing if they need to get them all or not. So, to end this video, let's do a quick recap of what makes a platforming level fun. Keep the player constantly engaged in jumps and hops, but add some breathing room every now and then. Think of cool setups that use items in an impressive and inventive way. Add some variety by having different types of jumps, as in full jumps, small jumps, and controlled jumps. Also add variety in the speed by making the player need to control their air movement instead of making everything line up just by holding right. Add indicators where they are necessary but not too many. Use theme-specific tricks like spin jumps, wall jumps, long jumps, etc. depending on your chosen game style. Make the player need to predict and time the next jump and landing by having items appear at the intended spot on time instead of always having still items or enemies to jump off of. Add a checkpoint or two. Make it pretty by adding aesthetic elements, but that goes for any type of level. Most of all, just make sure it's fun to play and not too repetitive. Last but not least, get inspired. Play some other platforming levels, take note of what you like and what you don't like, and get inspired by the levels you enjoyed playing. This is probably the best way to learn how to make a fun level. Team Jamp is a Discord server dedicated to Jamp levels, aka platforming levels. That is probably one of the best ways to find a good level because they're all playtested and approved by a group of people. Also, every Saturday at 2 PM Eastern Time there's a platforming race open to everyone, hosted by another Discord server. I look forward to these races every Saturday as they are always super fun levels. Also, I know that lots of my own levels I've made in the past don't even follow the list I made for this video, but like I said, I'm not pretending to be a pro at level design. I just decided I would write down all the things that make a good platforming level in my opinion, and share it with whoever is looking for a few tips and pointers. If you think I missed any important aspects, please feel free to share them in the comments. Hopefully this was helpful to you, and if you want to share some of your creations, feel free to do so in my Discord. Thanks for watching guys, my next video will be on Kaizo levels, so stick around if you're interested in hearing about those. Take it easy.